Hello and welcome to Tennessee Informer. I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving, and we definitely have a lot to be thankful for. Our guest tonight is Representative Monty Fritz, State Representative from District 32, covering parts of Loudoun and Roane counties. He is one of the most conservative legislators in our state, and I'm glad to have him back on the show with us. How are you doing tonight, Monty?
Thank you, sir, for allowing me to join you.
Well, let's get right to it. You've been to the border and are well informed on the situation down there, as well as what's happening here in Tennessee as a result. What can you tell the audience?
I did go to the border in July of 23 just to make sure I was somewhat informed. And you can't believe the media. You've got the fake news and the no news. And so we just went to see it for ourselves. And we got lots of alarming statements I heard from the Texans there in McAllen, Texas, about what was taking place at the border. They used two big phrases the most. One is they referred to the conditions there on the border on the Mexican side and the Texas side as lawless. And then the second thing they urged us to bring back to Tennessee was, it's coming your way. And so we tried to take that serious. I had met with both the Department of Safety folks and the TBI folks early after I had gotten elected to ask about gang activity. And I was told, I want to say probably in the January timeframe of my first year, that there were, foreign gangs operating in Tennessee, like MS-13 at that time. And so I knew we had some issues with it, and I wanted to try to take an aggressive approach at it. I think, and I'm certain of this when I say I think, but I think how you carry yourself, your posture, determines how criminal and predatory people will behave with you. And I wanted Tennessee to have a strong posture. I wanted us to enact legislation that would send both a strong set of consequences, like our House Bill 1872, if an illegal alien committed a violent crime in the state of Tennessee, or any crime with any deadly weapon, to be able to enhance that penalty to life without parole, sends a strong message. I thought that was important. I don't want to incarcerate in Tennessee foreign gang members and foreigners, illegals who have committed crimes. I don't want us to have to spend that $45,000 a year to incarcerate those folks. I just don't want them to come here, just to be honest. And if they do come here and they get themselves in trouble, we ought to absolutely throw the book at them. So that was what that bill was about, 1872. And it had a third part in it that allowed the magistrate or the person considering bond or bail to consider their residency status, because much like fishing, and we'll play on words and trying to be funny about a really serious topic. And I'm not making fun of human beings, all created in God's image, but illegal aliens are like fishing, and are unlike fishing. It should not be catch and release.
Absolutely.
We should hold them and detain them, and I'm a little disappointed that we don't have more coming out of Nashville right now like we do have in some of the states. Some of the governors and some of the state administrations are getting hold of Trump and saying, hey, we're here to help when this deportation starts. And when we start enforcing the law again, we're here to help. And maybe we've done that in Tennessee. I haven't heard it yet. Again, I walk softly and carry a big stick was a wise thing to do at the turn of the last century. And I think it's probably wise in Tennessee today, in America today, because I'm one of those people that it is convinced, based on what I saw at the border and what has been reported, that we have millions upon millions of illegal aliens in this nation. And you and I probably talked about this last time I was on your show, that it's the triple E. They're an existential threat. They're an existential threat because we do have criminal and, in some cases, I think paramilitary elements that have come into our nation. They're an economic threat to our nation because we can't afford to educate the children of the entire world. Yeah. Sweet children, I'm sure, beautiful kids from all over the globe that we're educating, and you and I are paying for it as Tennessee citizens, and that is wrong, and we need to stop it. I fully intend to carry legislation to address that this year.
Let me clarify something. So did 1872 pass?
It did. It's law now. It is law.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And the third is an electoral risk. We saw this all over the country, and governments, bureaucracies, and politicians in general are a little slow about their thinking, and rather than being proactive and putting things in place, in some cases, to be ready for these types of threats, because it's uncomfortable to talk about it, right? And sometimes you kind of find yourself out on that limb where nobody's with you, and you're saying these things, and other folks are just kind of making fun of you. But I'll tell you, on the illegal thing, those of us that have been sounding the alarm on this, we're right. I don't want to be right, but we're right. Ezekiel 33 is something I use this oftentimes to describe to people why I think this is important. Of course, in America, we have forgotten that God's law is supreme to everything, including the Constitution. And so in Ezekiel 33, verses 1 through 6, God lays out to Ezekiel the requirements for the watchman on the wall. And it says when the people choose a man from within their coast or from their coast to be that watchman on the wall, it is his responsibility in that day, his responsibility, could be his or her today, I would offer here in a minute when I conclude this thought, that we call out danger when it comes upon the land. The old version of the Bible, King James version of the Bible reads, when a sword comes upon the land. So that could be military destruction. It could be lots of things. But most theologians will tell you that applies to pastors and church leaders, and I agree with that. But I would also tell you in America, it applies to political servants.
It should.
Because the people of District 32 had called me from within the coast here of District 32, and one of my responsibilities is to warn folks of bad things that are coming, right? And I think you just have to have eyes in your head and use them to know that we have a real problem with this invasion that we've suffered. And so maintaining a strong posture, and that, walking softly and carrying a big stick is important. It sends the right message. It's a command presence. We have failed to demonstrate that in Tennessee. And that hurts people's feelings when I say that, right? Because it sounds like I'm attacking somebody. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just saying that we've had the opportunity. The Tennessee General Assembly, in the case of another bill, House Bill 2190, Article 3, Section 5 of the Tennessee Constitution says, in cases of, paraphrasing, rebellion and invasion, that if the governor is going to send the militia or the Army and the Navy of Tennessee, we don't have a Navy anymore, right? But if he's going to send the militia, the General Assembly has to declare that by law for public safety. And so when Governor Abbott of Texas in January of last year declared that his state was under an invasion, and we were talking about sending help, we had sent some help with the Customs and Border Patrol already. Governor Lee had done that, and I applaud him for that. But that
was like 100 troops or something?
Yeah, it's 100, 150. I don't remember the exact number. But then when Governor Abbott mentioned invasion, I said, well, this brings about something different. Our Constitution specifically addresses this. And so if we're going to send folks down there, we have to approve it. So I carried the bill, House Bill 2190, and we authorized the governor to send up to a brigade-sized force to Texas to repel the invasion. And there was money with that. And so that became law in May of last year. And I just assumed that we would send a couple hundred, maybe. I didn't have any expectation that we'd send 2,000. I think it would have been a great signal.
Yeah, absolutely.
To send 1,000 Tennesseans to the Texas border. And certainly it's not my responsibility to talk to the governor of Texas. Maybe Nashville called Austin, and Austin said no, but I doubt that.
I doubt that too. I'm doubting that. I think Bill Lee just doesn't want to send him. That's just my thought. Obviously, I don't have a very high opinion of him. But that's a perfect opportunity to, help at the border.
Well,
We always hear it's federal responsibility, but here the state of Texas is stepping up, and why the state of Tennessee wouldn't want to send people, especially now that the law is on the books. I don't understand why we don't have troops there.
I don't either. We sent the governor a letter on August 22nd, and I asked him basically that question.
No response, I'm sure.
None to date, none.
Yeah.
And that's bothersome to me because we missed an opportunity up until today. Maybe we'll change our mind tomorrow and do something strong. But we missed an opportunity to send two messages. And this was part of my strategy in the bill. I'll be honest with you. And I talked to the governor's staff about this when we were working the bill, that we're putting him in a position to be strong and to send a strong message to those criminal cartels, which we already knew were operating in the state, at least MS-13 type groups, right? That Tennessee's not going to take this lightly. And that's a strong message if we're willing to send that many people to the border. Right. And the second message it sent to that idiot Joe Biden, that Tennessee is not going to play ball with you boneheads in D.C., that they not only have no regard for these United States, they hate America.
Yep, absolutely.
And we needed to send that message. More governors, more general assemblies need to send that message to D.C. that we're not going to tolerate this. We are a collective nation of free states, and that bothers people when I say that as well. But that is the way the Constitution is written, both the Tennessee Constitution and the U.S. Constitution.
Absolutely.
And we have found ourselves in, and we'll sound like I'm picking on the governor a little bit, but, and let me say,
I will never boot you off the show for that. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, let me say I love him first as a human being, so I don't sound like I'm being mean, and I do. But the fact of the matter is this. When he was asked in Roane County, Governor Lee come to Roane County, and he was asked by a brave young reporter. He said, what do you get? This was before the election and everything. And he said, what are you going to do to protect Tennessee from these radical Harris-Biden administration? And governor's answer was basically, well, I'm going to work with whoever's elected. And that just kind of knocked my hat off, because how could we work with people who think it's okay to do top and bottom surgery on little boys and little girls? How can we work with people that think it's okay to provide hormone therapy for foreign convicts in the United States? How can we work with people who have demonstrated now, and this will get me on another soapbox, but they've demonstrated through at least a reported malfeasance. Maybe it's misfeasance because they're idiots in FEMA. But we have Western North Carolina people and upper East Tennessee folks have been saying since 3 or 4 days after Arlene hit. I know because I was up there on the Tuesday after the flood. I was in Unicoi County because I had friends there. We took a tractor and chainsaws and stuff up to go try to be of some assistance to those poor people that lost everything. And me and my pastor went up. And I heard it then that, where's the feds? What are they doing? And right, you've got this huge army base that we could have deployed lots of, this. We could have deployed medics and troops to help with things and engineer units. And these folks had faced a devastation they've never seen before. And when the questions came up about the possible malfeasance of FEMA, we had folks in Nashville saying, oh, don't say that. That could be foreign interference and foreign meddling. Surely this is not happening. And you had Tennesseans saying this. And you had folks in Western, again, I'm not responsible for those Western North Carolina folks. Their stupid Democrat governors let them down tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And history's not going to remember these men well. It's just not. Because they took this approach of wanting to work with let's be honest, and they're not out yet, so I guess you put yourself at some risk of these rogue 3-letter agencies in saying this, but the fact of the matter is these people are anti-American.
Yep, absolutely.
And we're sending money to Ukraine, to people who have no interest, and we have no business being there. We're sending soldiers to the Middle East again in an undeclared war. and spending millions upon millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of our dollars, and putting those men and women's life at risk. And we've got little old ladies in the mountains, the mountain folk as they call themselves. They're living in tents.
Wasn't like right after the flood happened, wasn't there a unit from Tennessee, a National Guard unit that deployed like a day or so after? Didn't they deploy to overseas? Now, I understand if that was the case, it was set up well before, but my question is, was there any attempt to have those people diverted so they could stay here? And I know that's hard to do with the military. I know that, I've been there, but I just wonder about that.
Yeah, you and I are both veterans, so I don't know. And, the soldier goes where he's sent. And so I went out to Gordonsville. One of their sergeant majors, maybe their CSM, and Bobby Brooks, and then a first sergeant had been my soldiers in Iraq in 04 and 05. They'd been in my platoon. They'd both been buck sergeants. And when I found out they were being, at least Brian's, the first sergeant, his unit was being deployed, I went out to say goodbye and get a chance to speak to them, and got a chance to talk with Bobby Brooks and a couple other folks that I had been deployed with. And that was the weekend of the floods, as I recall, as there was their final weekend here, as the rains had really started. And, within we sent, a few weeks later, we sent, I guess that was a couple weeks before Helene. And a few weeks later, we sent another group of soldiers, which included one of the armories in my district. They've headed off to the Middle East. And so anyway, all that, I sound like I'm rambling, but we've sent these folks overseas, and I'm thinking we're missing the opportunity. We shouldn't be sending any of our soldiers, guardsmen nor active duty soldiers, habitually into these combat zones, these imminent hazard zones, without a declaration of war.
Absolutely.
And Congress is sitting on their ass not doing anything.
Yep.
And rhinos and Marxist Democrats are okay with sending somebody else's sons and daughters off to die in some hygienically challenged part of the world because they don't have enough guts to stand up to an NDAA bill and vote no against it.
Yep. Absolutely.
We have to stop that.
I talked about this a little while back, and I think it was on this show, or maybe I was having a conversation with somebody. So, I'm former military, and I come from a military family. And, soldiers uphold their oath to the Constitution. That's what they do. And, they don't have a say in where they're sent or why they're going, okay? Once you're in, you're in. But looking back since the end of World War II, and we won't go any further beyond that, we've sent people to Vietnam. We sent people to, before that we sent them to Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. We are no freer today. We actually have less freedom today. Now, I'm glad, killing commies and killing Islamist terrorists is a good thing, but if you're harboring them and having them and allowing them in your country at the same time, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to send people overseas and allow that kind of garbage to go on here while we're constantly losing our freedom.
All that rambling I was just giving you was to get to this point. We're sending Tennesseans to other parts of the world to project strength. Why wouldn't we send them to the U.S. southern border in the state of Texas to project that same strength? And why wouldn't we send that message to those idiots that currently occupy offices in D.C.? We have cross-dressing men that are making decisions about where we're going to send our soldiers and what our policies are. These people are so mentally ill they can't determine their own gender. And we're going to allow them to make decisions about this. We are in a world of hurt. I do thank God. I think he had mercy on us with the election. I'm not sure that we haven't murdered so many babies in abortion and that we haven't committed so many other vile sins in front of a holy God that he's just decided, I've blessed this nation tremendously. I'm going to pull my hand of blessing off and let you see how it works when you're in charge. Because the last 4 years have kind of been that. Yeah. And So anyways, back to the whole immigration thing and illegal aliens. I'm all for folks coming here and working, but the legal immigrants that we have in the state of Tennessee are suffering because of the illegal aliens. Yeah. Yeah. It's hurting the workforce. It's hurting the industries that these men and women have lawfully and legally migrated here to take up. And it's hurting us. And we're paying really figures that we can't fully approximate because we don't have a good number of how many are in the state of children to educate children. And we should stop that.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's two things I want to hit on that. Number one, we do that all because of a Supreme Court decision.
Plyler.
There is, nothing in our Constitution requires that. Yep. And it's cowardly, in my opinion. Our state and every other state should say, hey, we're not doing this anymore. Federal government, you want these people that you brought over here educated, you pay for it. We cannot continue to allow them to put that on us. But that's another, when you do this, well, we're going to let the Supreme Court decide everything, that's what you get.
It's exactly right. And so what we're going to try in our state, and I don't have a final draft of it, but what my intent is to file a bill that says, okay, if you bring your child to register them for school and you can't verify that they're an American citizen, birth certificate, whatever the document is, then please deposit $10,000 with your LEA before your kid starts school.
Yeah. Here's another thing too. The Supreme Court, and I talked about this in the first hour, that there is the anti-commandeering doctrine, where the federal government cannot force a state to use its resources to implement, to uphold federal law or implement a federal program. But they are violating the anti-commandeering doctrine, in my opinion. They are de facto violating it with things like Plyler versus Doe. And by putting illegals in our state, then you've got the healthcare cost, you've got the detention cost, the criminal cost, not to mention, the crimes committed. So if they can't do it legally, why are they allowed to do it de facto by bringing them here?
Yeah, so we're going to try to address that and a couple other things this year with that, with the illegals. I think we've kind of helped lead the charge on some of the illegal alien stuff. We had what I thought was a really good bill. We'd worked with the Department of Safety to develop, and it was going to do a regular report out, an intelligence report out, if you will, to local law enforcement about what the illegal alien activities in the state were. And so there were a few people that were opposed to it and lobbied against it, and they were end up successfully preventing our senator from pursuing it. And I got to tell you that just outrages.
What is that organization? What is the organization that lobbied against it? Would it be Turk, Tennessee Immigrants and Refugee?
No, I actually think that it was probably that some of the biggest resistance to it was either the chiefs of the Sheriff's Association, and not the people, not the chiefs and the sheriffs necessarily, but just the folks that do the lobbying, prowling up and down the hallways there. And that's, but the fact of the matter is the elected official I don't have to carry what my leadership tells me to carry. And I don't have to do what the lobbyists tell me to do.
Right.
I'm supposed to be doing what's good for the people. And I can assure you of this, having been in all 95 counties in this state, that the majority of the people that I have talked to in those counties, they want something done hard and fast about the illegal alien issue. Yeah. And most are a little bit disappointed in how we have addressed it. And again, I do think the General Assembly took on some good things. Jake McCalman carried what I think was a good piece of legislation. There were a couple others, but we still have more to do. My bigger complaint probably right now is one of the things that we enacted into law. I find myself asking, why did you even sign the bill, Governor, if you weren't going to send anybody? Yeah. Just let it lay on your desk and become law, or veto it. But I don't know. There's something about the Nashville think tank that is out of alignment with the rest of the state of Tennessee, and I know that sounds a little bit bitter, but I will stand hard and fast to that.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I don't know how close you followed state politics before you ran for office. Obviously, you followed it some, but for about 15 years or so, I've been following it. And Nashville is San Fran on the Cumberland. I mean, it's just ridiculous the stuff that is allowed to go on, the good legislation that we can't get through in a supposedly conservative state with a Republican supermajority. And I think a lot of it has to do with the Chamber of Commerce crowd, especially where the illegal immigration issue is concerned.
Yeah, maybe. And I think there's some room for some work on a bill in that regard too. I really think there was another good bill that died last year regarding the transport. That there was, I think it was Ritchie had the bill that was going to require seizure of the vehicle that were transporting the illegals. I think we ought to do that. We're okay with seizing a citizen's vehicle if he's transporting something illegal. I say that ought to apply to United Airlines as well.
Well, here's the thing too, and I guess it's still going on in Tennessee, the asset forfeiture. I know several years ago, and like I say, I assume it's still going on, if they pull you over and let's say they ask to search your vehicle and you allow them, and let's say you have a good chunk of money with you, maybe you were going to another state to buy something with cash. Well, now they're convinced that's drug money. They take your money, and you got to fight to get your money back.
Instead of them having,
which is flat out wrong. Well, if we'll do that to citizens, and why would we not? We just need to be ruthless. We need to be Tennessee, the place that illegals want to avoid.
I agree. I mean, that was my whole plan for this. And you can do that with a smile on your face and still treat people like human beings. And you can still look them in the eye and say, hey, come back legally and we'll love you and make you part of being Tennessee. But if you try to kick the door in, it's going to be a rough ride for you. And we've just not been willing to exercise that. So it's disappointing to me. We're going to keep pushing some of those things. And, I hope I hadn't hurt enough feelings that I can't get some of that stuff passed. But ultimately, the citizenry of Tennessee, our Constitution says that we shall instruct our representative. And that's not just your state representative, it's county commission, everybody. But we've got much work to do there. One of the bills I've gotten the most attention from was our geoengineering bill. And to be honest with you, I hadn't given that a lot of thought until Halsey asked me to look at it about carrying it. And I started doing the research, and it's a real thing. And, few people, you'll talk and they just don't want to hear it. They can't accept the fact that someone would be so evil that they would inject chemicals into the atmosphere. But, lots of other states are starting to want to pass that kind of legislation now. And we need to do more on ours. I had to get something in that was no fiscal note.
All right.
And we were successful in doing that. And to TDEC's credit, the TDEC folks were great to work with on that to help us get something that wouldn't harm legitimate businesses and still prohibit the licensure of, dispersing chemicals for the express purpose of weather manipulation. But I'm also one of those folks now that the more I've researched it and I've went to the State Department's Office of Historian and read the report on Project Popeye. Our government's been manipulating weather for decades. Other governments weaponize weather and have done so for decades. And we, the people of the state of Tennessee, have not consented to being test subjects in these big geoengineering schemes that these educated beyond their intelligence people have thought up. And, I think we need to be asking some hard questions. I was encouraged that Gerald Scarametti and the governor's office had finally taken up investigations of the malfeasance of the FEMA, because again, early on, we heard from Nashville, not Scarametti, but we heard from the Nashville establishment that, hey, don't criticize FEMA. That's probably foreign interference if you're criticizing, which I think was just an absolute stupid statement to
Yeah,
utter.
absolutely.
But but anyways, they've started investigations now. Well, I will tell you, Dave, I'm working on the letter to send to both offices to ask them to, and I've already talked to Scrimeti's office about this a couple times. Let's investigate the cloud seeding. Let's investigate the weather manipulation. Let's start asking some questions about those that do use our skies. What are you doing in those skies? And I think it's high time for that. And to be honest with you, just to go, I'll take my FN hat off and put my tinfoil hat on for just a minute, just to please some of my non-thinking friends. But I'm telling you, those people in Upper East Tennessee, they deserve us to ask that question. Have we manipulated the weather? We did it in Vietnam in 1967.
Well, if we had the ability then, I'm sure we've got even more ability now.
We did it to the extent then that the State Department, not their words, but what the report says is that it might be immoral to bring that much rain on somebody. And if we had that technology then, we have it now. If we had it then, somebody else had it. So don't we as a state owe it to those people who lost everything, in some cases, including their children or their husband or their grandparent, right, to at least ask the questions in a structured way? I think we do. I'm going to be pushing for that.
Good.
I'm sure I'll get lots of pushback. And, I'm really proud of that. I took lots of heat on that bill because I stepped in front of that frame. But I will tell you this. That is one of the most talked about things. And inside the Nashville bubble, they've got some substance. I'm not sure what it is they've got in their ears. It's not bubble gum. It's not cotton. But they can't hear what Tennessee's saying. Right. But if they get outside that bubble and they talk to these grandparents and these airline pilots and these hundreds and hundreds of people that I've talked to about this topic, they'd realize there's a real concern, and maybe we ought to ask a few questions. But they're so drowned in that many, and I'm using they a lot there. I'm not giving them a pronoun. I'm trying to be polite. But they are so caught in an echo chamber of their own admiration that they can't look to Roane County or to Monroe County or to Meigs County or to Lake County and ask a question of what would be best for you, Tennessean.
Right. Well, what do you want? I mean, we're the ones that fund the government. We're the ones that they're supposed to be serving. That's the way it's supposed to be anyway. It seems to me that way too many of them think that the chamber and other business interests are what they're there to serve. And let's not upset the governor under any circumstances. Whatever he wants, that's what we want to do. So I don't want to come across as somebody that's just a contrarian. I really think our founders, I've done a little bit of reading on this, and I think our founders want a tension between the bicameral chambers, yep, of both the U.S. Congress and the Tennessee House. I think they wanted a little tension between the House and the Senate. It's designed that way. I think they wanted a little tension between the executive department or branch and the legislative department or branch. Yep. And I think it goes back to that George Patton saying, if everybody's thinking the same thing, then nobody's thinking. Yep. And I think our founders understood that, and they wanted a little tension with the judicial branch. I think I'll give a shout out to the senator from Memphis that wants to make Memphis matter, and that's Matter, not Madder. Brent Taylor.
Yes. Yep. He gave me a ball cap. I started to wear it for your show tonight, but I think he's done well with that because he's okay with bringing some tension with the judicial departments there. And I think our founders and framers expected that. Yeah. I think they expected there to be some tension between the states and the federal government, yeah, and between the counties and the state government. Yeah. I think that's all healthy. Yeah. And I think we get so caught up in this, well, we've got to all be on the same team, that it is not productive. Yeah. And the persons who lose their rights are the Tennessee citizens. Yeah. And the persons who benefit, back to what our conversation has been, are oftentimes violent, evil, demonically possessed criminals that have snuck across that border to bring drugs and traffic humans in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And so
I want to hit on that again real quick.
let me touch one more thing there. I'll ask this question. This will probably get me in the most trouble of anything I say tonight. Had we sent 500 Tennessee guardsmen to a Texas border, could we have stopped one murder? Could we have prevented one mule from carrying fentanyl into the United States? Could we have stopped the murder of the next, was it Riley Lakin?
Yeah, yeah.
Could these people who their lives have been terminated by some evil, violent, predatory person, could we have stopped one of those?
A trafficker. Could we have stopped a trafficker from trafficking some kid?
Yes. Yeah. And so not only should we have sent a strong message, but we may have missed an opportunity to save a life or prevent some human being from being trafficked like an animal.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've got a bigger trafficking problem in Tennessee than I think people realize. And you may have some more information on that. If you do, feel free to share it.
Don't know that I do. I know that, my district is at the confluence of not only the Tennessee and the Clinch River, but it's also at the confluence of the convergence of Interstate 40 and Interstate 75.
Right.
And what that means is there's a whole lot of stuff comes through 40 and 75, and drugs and people and human trafficking people. And I'm sure we're going to ask for more money in this coming budget to be able to handle some of those things. I can already see that being prepped in Nashville, and maybe that's okay. But wouldn't it have been better to spend that money to keep them from coming here?
Yeah.
Rather than having to react to them once they're here.
Well, speaking of money and speaking of the budget, it's been about maybe 3 or 4 years ago that our state spent $7.2 million, gave $7.2 or $7.3 million to Catholic Charities. Now, Catholic Charities' main function in Tennessee, at least, is to bring refugees here. Now, refugees come here illegally. I totally disagree with the program, and I disagree with the fact that our state has no say in it. We actually had a lawsuit over that, and our state was told it didn't have standing, because the legislature sued instead of the AG and the governor. All the same. Why we gave that NGO, who brings in refugees and who is also known to deal with unaccompanied minors at the time, it makes no sense to me that we would give an organization like that. And I wonder how many tax dollars from Tennessee go into NGOs in this state that facilitate illegal immigration.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. I would suspect that many of these organizations are pretty savvy in the way they operate. And, I think a similar concern that I've heard recently from folks in my district has been, I don't want any of the dollars, and outside my district, some of the adjoining district, I don't want any of the dollars that have been granted to any organization to go toward this whole transgender thing. Right. And I know it's going to offend the heck out of some people that I'm going to compare the transgender group, crowd, whatever you want to call it, with the illegal aliens. But the fact is they're both immoral and illegal. Yeah. And so that's the similarity that I'm drawing in that. And we shouldn't be spending our tax dollars on things that are immoral and illegal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, that's another thing. I don't remember Tennessee ever having a real budget fight in the last several years. I disagree with the fact that the legislature, and I understand they still have overall approval authority, but they let the governor make the budget, and then bills throughout the session get put behind the budget, and a lot of good legislation gets killed that way. You know what? Legislature passed the budget, governor either signs it, doesn't sign it, whatever, vetoes it. Our Constitution did not create a strong executive. A simple majority can override his veto. So I don't know why they spend all this time, and I don't mean you, but as a whole, and they spend all this time bowing to the governor and giving him power that he shouldn't have, that he doesn't have according to the Constitution. So I would hope that they would look harder at the budget, take it from the governor. He can sign it or not sign it. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'll offer two quick thoughts on that. I do think we want our executive department in Tennessee to offer here's what it's going to cost to fund the highway patrol for this year. Here's the mission that we're projecting, and this is the cost. And I think all that makes sense. I think some of the things that we end up putting in that are bothersome, and I voted. I don't want to be a hypocrite with this. I voted for both the last budgets. I'm not a big fan of the way we do it either. But then we'll slip in a couple $100 million for the Center for Performing Arts, and we do have an excess of revenue. It's went down some, but I think we ought to be looking more at how we take less revenue in and just spend less money. And I'm not a big fan of all the grant processes, to be honest with you. There's politicians a dime a dozen that'll line up behind that rubber check, and it's got a few zeros on it, and that they were part of that grant. And I'm not a big fan of that. I've stood next to a couple rubber checks reluctantly, but I don't do that very many times because I think it sends the wrong message.
Yeah.
And I think rather than us send all the money to Nashville and redistribute how we're going to send it back out through grants, won't we just let it stay in Rome County and Smith County and I think at a local level we can figure out how to spend it much better, I think, and we'll go what we can from the state level.
Oh, I agree. So what's some of the other legislation that you want to work on this year?
So the illegal alien legislation, we've got one or two bills on that. We're definitely. I want to try to protect the Tennessee taxpayer from some of the things that we're spending money on, and we've talked about a couple of those. We shouldn't be educating the world. We should not. So we've got to kind of put our foot down on that. We shouldn't be funding through grants and other dispensations of dollars LGBT parades and drag shows and all that stuff. And I think some of that's happening around the state still.
Yeah.
We should not be spending $14,000 a year to provide hormone therapy for convicts in custody of the Tennessee Department of Correction.
Who?
So So last year, I think it was Reagan that discovered this, and we passed a bill that would prohibit that, except for those that had started it already. And there's some number of convicts in the penitentiary that had gotten on this hormone therapy. When I asked the question, how long we'd been doing that, the answer I got was that more than this administration. So that should really bother us, that we had to make a law to stop that. that I got to believe that's right up there with the illegal alien thing. If I talk to the average Rome County person, Rockwood, Kingston, Lenore City person, Loudoun County, they're not going to want their tax dollars to provide hormone therapy for some old boy who wants to dress like a girl. Wow. And we shouldn't. It's immoral first. Yep. It's a higher law, and we've forgotten that. We had the chance recently to listen to the Barton guys, part of the Wall Builders, and they put out lots of really good information from authentic original documents and what our founders and framers really thought about things. And of course, we've all become consumed with the lie that our founders and framers were deists. And that's just not the case. No. The George Washington that had 4 holes in his coat and prayed to Almighty God for the salvation of this nation was far less a deist than the pastor of today that says, well, I can't talk about politics. We'll just trust that God will take care of that. I have to ask, who's the deist in that scenario? It's the modern person that just says, we're not going to get involved in it. And so you got a chance to listen to what, some speaking from the Barton fella, and it encouraged me to swing a little bit harder for the fence for the next couple of years. I heard in that discussion, you got a couple years, don't waste it. Don't try to go after tiny things. Let's take on things of significance. And so I've tried to do that some, and I can't take any credit for it. because this is new to me. I was a freshman, am a freshman, however, whatever that means. This whole seniority thing in politics where people have been there for 20 years and all of a sudden they're smarter than the new person, I think that's backwards. I think that some of these freshmen that are coming in now might have some really pure ideas that we ought to listen to. Yeah. Because I think that just like inmates become institutionalized, so do politicians. And I think after they've been in for a long, they get so accustomed to special parking places and titles and somebody always shoving free food at them. Yep. That they've lost touch with the reality of many of the people that they work for back in their district. And I know that that's a condemning statement.
Another part of the problem with that, especially at the state level, is so few people overall pay attention at state level. The whole focus is federal politics. I mean, like everybody thinks Trump's going to save America. I think Trump's going to do some great things. I hope he does. Voted for him. Want him to succeed, at least on most of the things he's talking about. But he cannot fix this country. We have gone way down too many wrong roads for too long. The only way to fix it is the states fixing it. Now, I'm a firm believer you're not going to have MAGA without MACA, making America constitutional again. And I think that means MASA, which means make America states again. I think that's the way you get to MAGA, in my opinion.
And I do think we have lots of good people. Some of them have been in office for a considerable number of years that want to do that. It's hard to get consensus of a number of folks. I think sometimes it's the way you present things, maybe. I think sometimes it's whether you've got the good Lord's blessing in what you're trying to do. But unfortunately, that variable that just sickens most of us is when the lobby group comes in to fight something and it dies. It's not based on what the people want or what's constitutional. It's based on how much those big donors coming in. I saw that a couple times this year, if not just big donors, big voices. And both of those I'll take on again the next in this next General Assembly. Essentialism. We declared people non-essential based on their occupation.
Oh, yes.
That is one of the most unconstitutional and immoral things that has ever happened in the state of Tennessee.
Yep.
And we should not forget that.
No.
We have to dwell on it, but we should not forget it. And we should remove the opportunity to be able to do that. So we had a piece of legislation that very simply said that you can't declare somebody non-essential based on their legal occupation. And secondly, if you do, you can be sued for it.
Well, right? Here's my question. How did that ever even get passed? I know the bill was passed in the early 2000s, but if you read our state constitution, there's no exceptions. There are no emergency exceptions for violating our rights. It says that right up front.
So when we first filed that bill in 23, somebody from the governor's office comes down and she says, "Oh, we can't. If we pass this, Representative Fritz, we won't be able to control rioting." And I'm thinking, well, the only place that rioting's illegal occupations in Memphis and parts of Nashville, and we're trying to stop that. And tongue in cheek, and
sort of,
yeah. And so then I held on to it until 24 and ran it. And we got the same pushback from the governor's office. And the governor's office, not Governor Lee, but people in his office had promised to come work with us on that bill. And they did not. They did not keep their word. They were not honest. And so they we filed it again. And we had it. It was going to go through the House. One of my fellow House members had come to me and said, "Monty, the governor's office come in and said, if we pass this, we'll be able to control rioting." Same old sad story, right? And so I said to this person, the whole thing that I had thought the year before, I said, well, rioting's only legal in Memphis, and we're trying to stop that, right? Let's get on Brent Taylor's side. Let's make Memphis matter again. And again, tongue in cheek, you can go to any of these blue cities and find that.
Oh, yeah.
But you can go watch the tape. It died in the Senate. The Senate chairman used those words. So the governor's office killed that bill. How power hungry, how unconstitutional do you have to be? I've got to believe that Governor Lee is ashamed of the people that worked against that bill. I've got to believe that there's enough moral fiber in him that he would say to those folks, maybe you're fired because you worked against that bill. Because I don't think he wants that kind of control over it. I really don't.
Well, okay, you have a higher opinion of him than I do. And I understand you work directly with him, but that didn't happen without his approval, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think maybe we could, that whole, and I'm hoping Trump uses it more, right? That DNA of you're fired. I'm hoping he does that to lots of people in D.C. Lots and lots.
Oh, yeah, en masse.
But I'm going to tell you, our governor needs to do that to some of these people in Nashville. Some of these little know-nothing, overeducated political science majors and attorneys that have come in and decided that they're going to set policy in the state of Tennessee, when they promote something that is directly unconstitutional like that, the governor should fire their ass.
Yeah.
He should send them off the hill that day. And until we get somebody that's willing to do that, the Nashville Mafia is going to keep running things, because I think that's what it is. I think there's a group of people that they've just decided, hey, have you ever heard the story of the Weebies?
I don't think so.
It's the new manager. He comes into the plant, and all the little workers there, he said, we're going to shape up. We're going to start being here on time, and we're going to start, our productivity is going to increase. And they say to him, well, we want you to meet the Weebies. And the new plant manager looks at them and he says, what are the Weebies? So we be here when you get here. We be here when you gone. And I think the Weebies are running Nashville.
Well,
and I think that I'm hoping this next governor's election that we have somebody that's got a spine of steel that runs for office and gets elected and cleans house.
Well, I hope so too. But now, in the meantime, since we're stuck with Lee till then, maybe somebody could send him a copy of that Senate hearing with the Weebies speaking on his behalf.
Yeah. Those Weebies, they snuck in and out of doors, up and down the hallway, and spread that fear and discontent to get that thing killed. That's the way they work. And so we're going to try to take that one on again this year. And we're probably going to take on there was a bill that we sent to summer study that really didn't get any summer study. But we had a local company that had PayPal hold a bunch of their money. And and I don't know if you and I talked about it, but when I started running that bill, I didn't have lobbyists from Nashville come to my office. I had K Street lobbyists come down.
Oh, I think you told me about that. And of course, now the nullification bill did go to summer study, and it is going to be brought back this year.
Yeah.
That Representative Halsey's going to carry in the House, and I'm hoping that we can get that through. I know it's a long shot. I know the Weebies definitely don't support that, but that goes back to the state stepping up. It's got to happen. And if they don't if they want to do it without the legislation, I'm all for that. If they want to start nullifying things left and right, hey, that's great. But we need to get people on record on that one, in my opinion. I think that's a very important bill. I'm pretty sure you support that from everything I understand.
I do, yeah. I think the general public be pretty aggravated when they saw state employees lobbying against their rights. Yeah. And I've seen that in committee, especially when it comes to gun rights. And the Second Amendment thing is the litmus test for all things constitutional or right and wrong. And I know that sounds a little bit hyperbolic.
No, it's true.
But if once you know where somebody stands on that Second Amendment, you can then find out where they're going to stand on everything else. Because if they will say to you that it is not absolute, then what they're saying is you don't have the absolute right to worship God as you want to, and you don't have an absolute right to speak your mind and to dissent with your elected officials, and you don't have an absolute right to overthrow that government, as our Constitution says,
right,
when that government gets out of control.
Yeah.
And you don't have an absolute right to that property that you're driving, so we'll just seize it.
Yeah.
And that cash that you happen to have $5,000, well, you don't have an absolute right to carry $5,000. That something could be awry there, so we're going to have to take that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the Second Amendment's a great litmus test. And I don't care if you've got an R next to your name or a D next to your name. You know, I really think some of these folks that have a D next to their name are supportive of people's right to self-preservation and right to stand up against tyrants. Yeah. And they realize that if they vote that way, that there will be some crazy lunatic, never accomplished anything Marxist who's about 25, 26 years old, come in screaming and carrying caskets and bullhorns and all that stuff, you know, and the big Democrat Party will send them in. Our only hope there is, Dave, that during the Democrat convention, of course, unfortunately, God forbid, they were aborting babies, but they were also fixing the men. They were neutering the males, if you remember. Yeah. So the male Democrats could go into the Winnebago while the females were having an abortion. The males could get themselves fixed. So our only hope is that none of them are remaining fertile, and we can't pollute the next generation with their stupid ideologies.
Yeah. But I agree.
But aside from the picking on the Democrats part of it, our real battle is with what is right and wrong. What does the Constitution say within the Republican Party? Yeah. That's the battle.
Yeah, they don't. Most of them don't seem to care. Unfortunately, that's the problem. You know, and you mentioned the Second Amendment, and I agree with you. It's a litmus test, and people that understand it understand that is, you know, if we have to use that to defend ourselves from a tyrannical federal government, that's what the Second Amendment's for. So what I don't understand is so many people that get that, but will tell you, well, you can't nullify a federal government, an action from the federal government. Like, wait a minute. So I can shoot them if I have to, but I can't tell them no. That makes no sense. And I don't mean me individually. I'm talking about as the state, because, you know, a free state, individuals have a right to own arms, and the state has a right to have a well-trained militia to defend them against a tyrannical federal government. Well, so that same state can't tell a tyrannical federal government no, which is all nullification is telling them no. But we can shoot them.
Yeah, we definitely do need to tell them no. And we may have talked about this. I know I may be running closer in your time, and I've been really talkative, but we have no hope in recovering from where we are through legislation. We have no hope in recovering from where we are through budgets or through spending alone.
Right.
We need a miracle. I said that in 95 counties to somebody, sometimes one person, sometimes 150, sometimes 300 people. But we need a miracle in the state of Tennessee. And that miracle, in some cases, is going to be some of these politicians growing a backbone. And in some cases, it's going to be some of them growing a brainstem.
So maybe fundraising needs to be for that. So fundraising for spinal implants and for brain stems. That's what we need the fundraising for, rather than just merely electing them.
For solid red brain stems.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we definitely need. I think God has shown us much mercy in the last year. I'm hoping that will continue. I'm proud to get to be a part of some of these things, and lots of good people, you know, in the General Assembly. Some have been there for a long time, some have been there for a little while, come along and helped and coached and tutored, and I appreciate that. Some of the preconceived ideas that we have, that, you know, we have to get folks permission to do things, we need to abandon that. That is not a founder's principle.
Absolutely.
That is a seniority principle that has been taken from corrupt labor unions and implanted in politics. And you see it in D.C., but you see it in Nashville. Oh, yeah. You see it in local government.
Nashville, it's amazing. They're like a bunch of lieutenants around a brigade commander. I mean, that's the way some of them act up there. It just, I can't believe it. But, well, hey, I thank you for coming on the show. I thank you for all you do. I wish we had 40 or 50 or 100 more like you up there in the legislature. We could get a lot of things done then. But I do appreciate all you do, and I just hope I hope you're successful this year for our sake, for what you're trying to pass.
Well, we're going to try to be. We have, I've probably got 20 pieces of legislation that I could prioritize to pass. That number, it may be 10, it may be 15 this year. I understand we're thinking about, reducing the number of bills. We do consider too much legislation.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to have just one year where everybody had to write 5 or maybe 7 pieces of legislation that would either reduce a tax or fee or reduce a requirement on the law-abiding citizen. And I think we could leave Tennessee a much better place if we did that.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, hey, thanks again. Take care, and we'll definitely have you back on sometime during the session when you're available.
All right, Dave. Have a good night. Thank you.
You take care. I have some event announcements and information about our guests next week in just a minute. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, Tennessee Informer. Also, please find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Now, some announcements for the upcoming events. On the 23rd of December, the Bill of Rights Banquet. That's going to be, the theme for this year will be our spiritual heritage. It will be held Tuesday, December 17th at Trinity Chapel, 240 First Avenue, Dayton, Tennessee. Registration at 5:30. Paid reservations, $40 each. Children under 12 are $20. They need to be received by December 15th. You can contact June Griffith at 423-775-0774, or you can mail it, and that's to June Griffith, 265 Crenshaw Lane, Dayton, Tennessee 37321. Evelyn's Catering will furnish the meal as usual, and it's not a fundraiser, merely covers the expenses. The Henry and Stewart County TFA will meet this Thursday at the Paris VFW, December 5th. Meet and greet with snacks at 5:45, drinks available for purchase. Our meeting's at 7. We did have a speaker from Che Tac out of Huntington, the maker of some of the world's most famous sniper rifles. Unfortunately, that speaker is not going to be able to make it, but we will do some legislative updates, and we'll also be receiving donations and new gifts for the Henry County Sheriff's Office toy drive. You don't have to be a member to attend. And by the way, our guest for next week will be Sherry Rendell of FAIR, which is the Federation for American Immigration Reform. She'll be here to discuss things that our state can do to reduce illegal immigration. And hey, thanks for now, and good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.